In 1545, Spanish prospectors discovered Cerro Rico of Potosí in the Andes, a silver deposit so vast it promised to reshape global wealth. Over the next 150 years, Potosí would yield between 45 and 50,000 tons of silver, fueling Spain's treasure fleets and wars across Europe and the Americas. Yet this immense flow of silver did not secure lasting power or prosperity for Spain. Instead, it locked the empire into a cycle of debt, dependency, and repeated bankruptcy. Spain's empire was built not on pure wealth, but on borrowed treasure, mortgaged to foreign creditors. Spain's American conquests were not paid for from royal funds or sovereign currency issuance. King Charles I relied heavily on external loans to fund these campaigns, such as Cortez's in Mexico and Pizarro's in Peru. Merchant banking houses from Genoa, Germany and Portugal advanced money secured against future silver shipments. Much of Potosí's silver was already promised to creditors before the first silver left the mine. Spain entered empire building deeply in debt, already willingly surrendering sovereignty to financiers, when in actuality the royal prerogative could have been used to undertake this conquest. In fact, responsible issuance of the royal prerogative actually meant that there was never any need to go and seek precious metals. But that's another story in itself. Central to Spain's borrowing was the Asiento, a contract for short-term loans from foreign bankers explicitly secured against American silver shipments. Creditors had legal priority to be repaid first from incoming treasure fleets. This system gave Spain immediate funds but made the crown's solvency dependent on uninterrupted silver flows. The Asiento was not just a loan, it was a lien on Spain's colonial wealth that shaped the empire's fiscal trajectory for centuries. Creditors certainly did not lend money out of goodwill. They gained exclusive rights to supply vital goods like mercury for silver refining and also military equipment. They secured privileges to collect taxes and customs duties, controlling key revenue streams. They also pressured Spanish monetary policy, including minting decisions to protect their investment. Their influence extended deep into political decisions, turning Spanish sovereignty into an instrument of creditor interests. This is detailed in the book Lending to the Borrower from Hell. Silver shipments were vulnerable. Piracy, shipwrecks, and mining declines delayed payments. Each disruption forced Spain to renegotiate loans on even harsher terms, with interest at higher rates and tighter conditionalities. This cycle entrenched creditor control, transforming empire building into a debtor trap. What appeared to be Spain's financial independence was diminished as creditor interests truly dictated policy and revenues. Treasure fleets were prime targets for privateers backed by rival powers like England, France and the Dutch Republic. Lost or seized silver tightened Spain's cash flow, forcing it towards new borrowing. And it is certainly plausible that financiers who funded Spain's conquest may also have gained from piracy, whether it was by offering higher insurance premiums or by pushing Spain deeper into debt through missed payments and refinancing. They expanded their control over financing in the event of any sort of default. Stolen silver was often rerouted to Asia, where demand was high and silver overvalued. This laid the foundation for global gold and silver arbitrage. Merchants exchanged American silver for Asian gold and luxury goods, generating enormous profits. Financiers could profit twice, first by enforcing Spain's debt contracts tied to future silver, then by exploiting Asian markets' appetite for silver. The Asiento loans granted exclusive trade monopolies, tax collection rights, and priority claims on the silver. Smuggling and trade circumvention by Dutch, English, Genoese and Portuguese merchants further eroded Spain's direct revenue. The book Pillaging the Empire, Piracy in the Americas argues piracy and financial manipulation were deliberate strategies to control Spain's wealth and sovereignty. English privateer Sir Francis Drake captured over 200,000 pesos of silver in the 1570s alone. Between 50 and 75% of Potosi's silver output from 1570 to 1620 was funneled through Manila to Asian markets, as Flynn and Giraldez document. Europe and the Americas held a gold-silver ratio around 12 to 15 to 1, but Ming China valued gold at only 5 to 6 times silver. This price gap created massive arbitrage opportunities. As the article Cycles of Silver, Global Economic Unity through the mid-18th century explains, silver flowed repeatedly across the Pacific aboard Manila galleons. Merchants exchanged silver for gold as well as luxury goods, which then circulated back to the Americas and Europe via Portuguese ports like Macau and Japanese hubs like Nagasaki. This trade was not one time. It repeated multiple times. The gold to silver ratio created a high frequency arbitrage loop that multiplied profits for traders exploiting these regional price disparities. Spain's treasury saw only a fraction of this wealth. Large volumes of silver were diverted before official accounts. Smuggling and evasion by foreign merchants further drained silver coffers, and this perpetual cycle drained the empire's fiscal resources and allowed private and foreign merchants to capitalize on Spain's riches far more effectively than the crown was doing so. Worse, the Spanish crown did not secure substantial revenue from seigniorage on the minting of pieces of 8. Seigniorage is the difference between the intrinsic value of the silver in a coin and the value it holds once stamped and authenticated. The piece of 8 was the global reserve currency of its era, yet the crown's policy effectively turned seigniorage into an implicit subsidy for merchants to export silver from Spain. By minting coins of high and consistent quality with guaranteed weight and purity, Spain created a premium on its currency. This premium allowed merchants to profit from moving silver through global trade networks, particularly into Asia, where demand for silver was intense. This demand was amplified by the international reputation of the piece of 8. Which was minted not only in Spain, but also in colonial mints in Potosí, Mexico City, and in Manila from 1597. The Manila mint ensured that silver arriving in Asia could be coined into pieces of 8 locally, maintaining their premium in Asian markets. This allowed merchants to transport melted silver, which is easier to ship in bulk, and then have it minted upon arrival in Manila, guaranteeing standardized purity for trade. The Spanish crown avoided debasing the piece of 8 for most of the 16th and 17th centuries to preserve its global credibility, but it expanded seigniorage domestically through heavy issuance of copper vellon coinage from 1599 onward. These low intrinsic value coins financed deficits but caused severe inflation in local transactions, further damaging Spain's internal economy while leaving the international silver trade untouched. Creditors and merchants controlling silver arbitrage absorbed most of the economic gains from this system, and the crown enabled their dominance. The crown's monetary policy was shaped by creditor demands for currency stability to safeguard loans, which reduced fiscal autonomy. The absence of restrictions on silver exports ensured that pieces of 8 left Spain rapidly, feeding a constant flow into Asian and European markets. The outcome reflected the dynamics of a Triffin dilemma. Spain's currency was anchored in silver from the Americas, but global arbitrage opportunities and the demands of oligarchic creditor networks required Spain to supply silver far beyond its sustainable fiscal capacity. This crafted structural tensions between the needs of the domestic economy and the requirements of the global monetary system. intensifying fiscal strain and deepening dependence on external finance, much as we see with the dollar today. Potosí silver appeared to fill Spanish coffers and fund grand armies, but it failed to produce sustainable growth at home. The Spanish nobility and merchants lived off silver rents rather than investing in agriculture or manufacturing. Domestic industry stagnated. Spain increasingly depended on imports for textiles and grain. During the price revolution, inflation rose about 400% between 1500 and 1600, according to economic historians, with wages lagging far behind. This inflation began before the silver actually arrived. Most Spaniards had limited access to these pieces of aid and relied on barter or low-value currency in the early 16th century. Silver primarily collateralized government borrowing and credit expansion. Loans fueled consumption indirectly by enabling spending among elites, but it did not increase the general population's purchasing power. The silver inflow worsened Spain's fiscal weaknesses and distorted its economy rather than helping to actually build resilience. Spain's constant wars against the Ottoman Empire, France, England and the Dutch rebels demanded vast resources. Creditors structured loans to ensure perpetual credit demand. Military payrolls and colonial defences depended on annual refinancing, locking Spain into a cycle of borrowing and fiscal vulnerability. Spain declared bankruptcy 6 times between 1557 and 1647. Each involved payment suspensions and renegotiations that increased creditor control. These were managed insolvencies rather than unexpected failures. Bankruptcy was a structural feature that reinforced Spain's loss of fiscal autonomy, which is well documented in this book, Imperial Spain. By the early 17th century, Cerro Rico's richest veins were depleted. Mining required harder labour, expanded forcibly through Mitia system, conscripting indigenous men and African slaves under brutal conditions. Mortality rose sharply, silver output declined, yet Spain's debts and military obligations remained constant. The empire's foundation was crumbling under its own weight. Spain's 16th century silver economy was shaped by systemic factors, ensuring financial dependence. This included debt finance conquest, giving early leverage to creditors. Loans imposed enormous conditions, transferring control over trade and revenue. Piracy and privateering increased lender power, and global arbitrage drained silver before it enriched Spain. Domestic economic distortions were magnified by inflation and stagnation. Wars ensured ongoing borrowing needs. Repeated bankruptcies became normalized, deepening creditor influence, and the rich mountain of Potosí acted as collateral for a vast imperial credit system Spain never really controlled. Its silver ensured Spanish power only by mortgaging the future to a creditor oligarchy. Spain could have used its royal prerogative to issue currency or mobilize internal resources directly for this Latin American conquest. Instead, Charles I and his successors consistently relied on powerful foreign banking houses to finance imperial expenses. This choice subordinated sovereignty to creditors who wielded enormous economic and political power. Rather than full fiscal autonomy, Spain's monarchy effectively collaborated with a creditor class that shaped the empire's trajectory and contributed directly towards its long-term decline. The Peace of Eight was not just a coin of wealth, but a chain that shackled Spain to repeated bankruptcy and eventual imperial erosion. Thanks so much for joining me. I do hope you found this interesting. Do consider checking out the other videos in this playlist, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.